Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here today for Live from the Studio with Xwalacktun and Josephine Lee as part of the Worldings International Residency Exchange Program. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Griffin Art Projects, sorry, everyone, I'm just getting a bit of feedback. Okay, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Griffin Art Projects is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Musqueam, and Stolo nations, and we are honored and grateful to undertake our work here. So today we are so grateful and honored to open our presentation with a warm welcome song from Xwalacktun. So thank you so much, Xwalacktun, for your generosity and your time, and I will hand things right over to you.
Xwalacktun Queen Shna, Pastos Wild States. I'm standing here in the Squamish territory. I am Squamish, and I'm also part Namgis, which is the top part of Vancouver Island here in British Columbia. There's a big, my hands are up, and this is a symbolism for us to welcome people. Welcome to this virtual Zoom meeting with us and share our space with you. And this is just a space that was offered by Griffin, and my hands are up to Griffin for allowing us to work here. And I'm here to, my next door neighbor is Josephine, and I'm just getting to learn her about who she is and what she does. And so on behalf of the Griffin and all the people from all around the world here, big welcome. So this is a song sung by, his name is Xwalacktun. He uses a song to welcome people. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, hey, 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 we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, hey, 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 we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, hey, 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 we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, oh, che, we ya cha, ya. Oh, hey, 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 we ya cha, ya. Osia. Everybody go home now. No, that's just the thing my brothers and I, we do always when we welcome people, we ask them to go home now. It's just out of fun because in our culture, we love humor. We love humor to laugh. And to laugh is good medicine. So we always do this in our communities. We've got nicknames, we tease one another. And when we stop teasing one another, that means there's something wrong. So then we'll check into that. So that was our welcome song, and again, I'm here just to share this bit of studio space I have here with Griffin, but I have a studio space at home, and I have a long driveway where I do lots of artwork on the driveway also. But my main focus is actually getting people together and having dialogue and learning about who we are, where we're from, what's the purpose of our life here, where can we go from here in our life. Because when I use my name Xwalacktun, Xwalacktun is an ancestral name. It's been passed on for eons, for I don't know how old the name is. But when I received the name, there's a one-day ceremony to receive that name. When I received that name, there's 4 new blankets laid out on the floor. And when I step on those blankets, and we use 4 because, like I sang 4 times because the 4s are very important to us in our culture. It's the directions, the seasons, the elements, our lifeline, being an infant, youth, adult, elder. So in our life journey, when I receive that name, I need to carry myself in the best way I can, because many other people before me have carried this name, and they did not dirty that name or mud that name, they would say. Carry that name in a good way because it represents your family. So if you look after the name will look after you. So this is one of our teachings. So when I stepped off that blanket, that meant I'm going to walk differently today, because I'm going to walk a new journey in my life because I received that name. And those 4 blankets are given away to people in the community. Because back in the day, to make a blanket, it may take you a year to make a blanket. And when you receive a blanket, that's such a wonderful gift to receive. So today we actually practice our ceremonies and our feast system, our potlatch system. We give things away. When we receive that, people ask you where you got that, and they could tell the story of what happened that day. And actually, after the feast, we feast everyone, then we do the work, and then we do a celebration, and we do a gift giveaway. So those are the 4 things we had to do. And it took usually about 4 years to prepare for this. That's our focus, to take 4 years. So as an artist, I want to carry myself in the best way and do the best work I can and do it better again tomorrow. So it's just like our life, always doing something new and trying something different. So here I am, enjoying my day with you. So it's another challenge for me because this is what I do anyways. I like sharing with the little ones, with the elders, and sometimes the elders give me feedback. And because even our elders are struggling, trying to think about what was it like back in the time, because we know bits and pieces, because it was all taken away, as we know, and we're working with truth and reconciliation, and what can we do now to move forward, not to forget the past, but to find a way where we can walk in equal, like we're all human beings. We say, I am stomoch, I'm stomoch, I'm a human being. And we have to respect one another. Like I shared yesterday, we have this canoe. I'm going to pick up this pad, and I'm going to turn it around because I'm going to show you some work here. Just what's in the shop here. So this panel could be a door or just a panel. And what it has a circle, which could represent the earth or the moon or the cycles. We have an eagle, and we have these human beings, stomach, one's male, one's female. And below that, it's holding a salmon. And then there's a mountain. This mountain is, today we call Inchakai. It means where the dirty water comes from, because where the runoff from this mountain is a volcanic mountain. So it's usually dirty, runs into clear, crystal clear water, which is Chacamas River. And that's where those two places meet. There's a place called Chikai, which is coming from Chakai. Then I have a canoe below it. And that canoe is to help tell the story of a great flood that happened and how we survived this flood and how we are still here as Squamish people, Squamish. So the canoes, when the water raised up, we anchored ourselves to this mountain in Chakai. And over time, we're running out of food. So we called on to the creator, who is like the form of this eagle, but with a crown on top, of the ear, would come up top on both sides, would represent a thunderbird. So we asked the thunderbird to send an eagle to gather some salmon so that we can survive this flood. So the eagle came and brought this to us, and we were able to survive. So when the water receded, we remained where we are, but some canoes were set adrift and they ended up in other areas. And that's where they remained, where they landed, where they found land there. So it's a great flood story. So I wanted to make a connection of who we are, where we're from. And the canoe represents also that we're all in the same canoe. We have to maintain balance. We have to pull together, work together. And one of our teachings is the weakest is our strongest link. So if somebody's feeling weak in the canoe, we uplift them. We don't put them down, we uplift them, because then they can rise up and gain some strength again so they can pull their own weight. I'm just gonna move over here. This is a copy of, this is the original. This one is a CNC copy. It was a CNC machine made a copy of this. So the original was 3D scan, and it would rough it out. And we actually made, did a number of 5 of these. The actual original took me 1 month to carve. And this one, when I clean it up, it only takes me 1 week. And then numbered it from 1 out of 5, because I'm only going to do 5 of these. And 2 of them were at Emily Carr University, and 1 is at a business in Calgary. And I'm going to move over to some drawings here. So first of all, I receive my piece of wood. I will mill it up with a Alaskan mill and cut the wood up to the size. Then I would draw it to scale. And like this piece here is for secondary school, and it's very diverse. So we want to include everyone. I let the students help out, the administration help out. There was like 160 ideas, but I had to combine it into almost like 3 or 4 ideas, so that I wanted to make sure everybody's ideas were included, and we put it all in the talk when I do the work. So that one's still yet to be worked on, and this one here is to be worked on at Emily Carr University. It's a very old piece that I'm copying, but it had a little bit of Northern style to it. When my mother was 5 years old, she used to look out the window, and she's 90 now. She used to watch Chief Joe Matthias carving this type of totem poles. Normally we don't have totem poles here, but we have house posts that would hold up our beams in our house. So I copied the form of it, but I'm adding more Coast Salish design to it. And I have this lady here. Tasha is a performing artist. She asked me if I can do a box for her. And I'm doing this box here for her, and it's about 2 feet square. And her idea was the cedar woman and the messages that we want to get out, as if you were to throw a pebble into the water. So there's as if this was water rippling out to help pass on the messages. And on this box, you see these circles with copper in it. It's for those are singers. So that represents singers with their mouths wide open. And you heard me singing, it's more of a ho, 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 hey. So that's representing the mouth open. So that ripple effect will carry on around the box. And it actually takes on an idea of a co-salish eye. So this is going to represent the eye pupil and the eyelids coming around the box, like it would like on my drum here, there's an eye there. And those eyes are showing ripples too. And the eyes are to remind us that we are always being watched by our ancestors, our creator, our community, our family, our friends, and also our conscience. And on my drum design, I show as if this Thunderbird is going clockwise, but the energy of that is going counterclockwise, as if there's water going down a drain. Then over here I have a talking stick, and well, I even brought a lacrosse stick because it's one of the back east is one of the main sports back east. Some sage, feathers. Eagle feathers are kind of North and South American. We use the feathers for ceremony because to us, the eagle or whatever bird it was that had was praying that it was the closest to the creator. And when an eagle soared above us, we would raise our hands and thank the creator for this beautiful day today, because we thought that eagle was doing was creating an invisible eye so that the creator is looking down at us. See, the eyes are even on the head of the person and on the shoulder of the wing of the eagle. So eyes are always usually around a lot. Co-salish art. But on my mother's side, I'm part Quag. This building here was there when she was a little girl up in the Alert Bay area. And she went to a residential school up there. And she was about 5, 6 years old. And then she ended up in another place. It was called Kokalitsa, which I'm doing a carving for. I wonder if you could pull that one up. I'm doing a carving for a church. Yes.
I'll just kind of flip through them for
yeah,
Tell me when to stop.
That's the one there.
Okay.
Back one. Yeah, back one. So the first idea was they wanted to do some dialogue around the residential school and the effects that it had. What do we do with this flag? Put that on. It used to be hanging on the wall on the church. And now I have it embedded in the carving as if it was buried, but also the Thunderbird is going to reach over and grab onto that plaque and take it away. So there underneath is like a nurturing bear, which is holding a copper shield, and the copper shield symbolizes wealth in the feast system, potluck system. And inside that shield, I have 2 children, 1 male, 1 female. So when the church took away the children at the age of, the youngest was 5 years old, they would take them away from your family, bring them to the school, and you never to see them again. It became 16 or something. So I faced the 2 siblings together because over time they came back together and we were able to see one another again. Because back in the school, they would separate the male and the female, boys and girls. They weren't able to see one another until they left the school. So the copper shield was to symbolize the wealth and the protection, the mother bear holding on to the. So I want to create some dialogue around what can we do we understand the past, we know where we are in the present, and where do we want to go in the future. So this pole is going to be around for a long time, because they said a lot of our people are saying it took 150 years to take away from the children, but now it's going to take 150 years to educate everyone. So there's continuously dialogue we have to have around this. So this is going to be permanently placed in this church in Vancouver. I think if we wanted to, we can go randomly with the other slides. Just this one here is my son James was commissioned to do a pole, totem pole. It's the larger one in the background. And I said to him, I said, well, what shall we do? We got to work this out. So it's very diverse. We had people come around from the administration, from the Vancouver School Board. We had schools from around the district come around and watch and ask questions, and also take a little bit of wood off. So what I designed on top is a Thunderbird. It's as if it's coming down really fast. It's holding, its wings turn into hands, and the hands are holding onto the earth. And it's coming down fast, as if it was coming down to remind us we need to do some changes around here, because with what's happening with climate change and everything else that's going on around our Mother Earth, that we have to start making changes pretty quick. And below that is the Coast Sailor Side to remind us we're being watched. And I have a frog also coming down, and the frog is the communicator to communicate with all languages that we need to come down and communicate with one another. And below that is a woven blanket, and that blanket is to cover us. That's how we would wear a blanket over our shoulders, crossing our heart, and that symbolizes we're working for the community or for the family, that we got a lot of work to do to help make these changes. So we're using all this design of work to help educate. So the students will come and learn about this and stand around the poles and learn more about what we were thinking and where we want to go. And then there's a buffalo on there. We don't have buffalo close to here. Buffalo is more of the plains, but there's a lot of people that live here are from there. And we have the eagle. My son designed the eagle with the bear holding salmon. So there's the same kind of message I was sharing with you earlier. We'll go to another one. This one's at a Vancouver General Hospital. There's pieces that were going to be from Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. There's 3 of them in this space in the main entrance. And it carries, I wanted to set some light into what's happening. So it's backlit, and it has the Thunderbird, the human, the wolf, the trout head, the energy showing around. So there's a lot to share about this piece, about focusing on our health. And on the other side of that house post is a double-headed serpent. And the serpent talks about where we are in our life. We got to find out there's a good side, a bad side, but there's also a balance on it. So there's, in our old stories, there's a person by the name of Hopoken in Wichita who slayed a serpent. And he gained the power from that serpent and became a healer. But that power only could be used in a good way. Next. Oh, there. I sent the other one. Oh, good. So you can see the serpent here on the right side, and the Thunderbird is in the middle. So the Thunderbird is the one that can take away the serpent. They're both supernatural. They're both so big and so small we can't see it. So while I was doing this piece, I used to share it because I was working on this piece just when I started that piece. The pandemic happened, and I was focused more on healing and what can happen, what can we do to, as a global, what can we do to get over this? And in the background, I helped my friend, and that's an ancestor in the background. The other house post is an ancestor with his eyes closed. So there's a lot of storytelling around these pieces. Next. Well, I shared the flood story. This building was built on a floodplain. So I said, well, why don't we tell the story of the Great Flood here? Because they're built on this floodplain. The whole building's on stilts. And this is in Whistler. So I shared the flood story with you already, but this one's an aluminum piece, 6 foot diameter by 16 feet high. And I also shared, you know, we as Squamish people, we have to also survive another flood. And that flood is now, and that flood was of people, because just only 150 years we were flooded with people. There were just people all around BC now, all across Canada, you know, all over America. You know, it's just a lot of people showed up. So we're here trying to survive that now. So we have to just learn how to cope and what can we do to make changes. And just to kind of move on, like I have this paddle here, a little paddle. It has a big spring salmon. My boy, he's only 6.5. His name is Kos. Kos means a big spring salmon. You can see here's where it says Kos right there. When he was born, like my wife, she wanted to name the boy, and I said no. Oh, sorry, somebody's been trying to call. I should have turned the data off. It was a big spring salmon. My wife wanted a name, look for names. I said, no, I don't do names until they're born. And then my other kids are the same. I didn't, oh, gee, what happened? Can you still see me? Oh, here we go. I should turn it. Give me a sec. I'm sorry. I got to turn the data off here. Otherwise, I might get interrupted again. Okay. Is that working?
Perfect.
Oh, good. Because I put airplane mode and I thought, hopefully I didn't lose you. Yeah. So the story went on with my wife was in labor for like over 50 hours, and she was tired. I was tired, but she was probably more tired than me for sure. And they ended up in resting. I fell asleep after he was born, and before I fell asleep, I was wondering what are we gonna name this boy? So as I crashed, I ended up being at the mouth of the Squamish River in my dream. Then I heard my name being called, Xwalacktun, Xwalacktun, where are you? So I woke up and I said, oh no, I'm right here, I'm right here. And I was still in the hospital. And my wife woke up because she heard me and she said, what's going on? I said, well, I was just in a dream. I was at the mouth of the river looking for a name for our son. But no name came yet. So 4 days later, an elder called. She heard how heavy this baby was. He was 11 pounds, 8 ounces. And she says, oh, that's a big baby. She says, oh, that must be Kos. And I said, that's it. Kos means big spring salmon. That's the biggest salmon in our waters. So I said, oh, that's it then. We'll name him Kos. So, what I can do is there any more slides anymore? Did I send you more?
There are a few more. I'll pull them up.
Okay. My tools, I really look after my tools, you know, because if I look after the tools, they look after me. As you can see how I set my tools out, make sure metal doesn't touch on metal. And you see, I reverse my tools like this one here, this one here, this one here. You know, this one I would have turned this way. Because normally if I accidentally bump into it, it's going to hit the wood rather than metal on metal. And I make sure my tools are razor sharp and just listen to the wood come off like music. Okay. I talked about that one already. Oh, there's a little video here. Cool. This is the one for the church. Oh, so hands up to Frank for helping me out with that piece. Just the guitar part wasn't fitting for what I was doing, but that was all right. Anyways, I think there was one more piece where that that piece of carving that we're working on Grenville Island, is it there, Jazz? Just to finish off with that image.
Let me see, Xwalacktun. Let me just pull up from the beginning because I think I might have
Okay.
missed.
Yeah, that's a power station. That's a pedestrian overpass. This is the one here. Yeah, you can see where I'm at with this carving now.
I think we might have been through them.
Yeah, great. Well, again, my work takes me everywhere. I'm not just in one spot a lot. I move around in different areas, and like right now I have like 5 projects on the go. They're big projects, but this is where I'm at today. Well, thank you for your ears, and maybe you'll have some questions for me later. We'll see you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Xwalacktun, for your wonderful presentation, as well as your wonderful opening welcome and song. We're just so grateful for your wisdom and your knowledge sharing and your stories. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. I didn't get a chance to properly introduce you at the beginning, and I just want to make sure that we do introduce you and give you a proper welcome from to all of our audience members. So if it's okay to introduce you after the fact, if you don't mind,
Okay.
I would love the opportunity to introduce you formally to our audience members. So thanks again, Xwalacktun. That was just so wonderful. So Xwalacktun is a renowned master carver of the Coast Salish ancestry from Squamish and Qualcomm clans, and his remarkable work and career extend over 40 years and across numerous forms, including, as we've seen, public art, sculpture, metalwork, jewelry, glasswork, drawing, and printmaking. Xwalacktun is the recipient of the Order of British Columbia, the Fans Honors Award from the North Vancouver Arts Council, and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. And his public art awards are many, including more than 30 poles, which have been presented throughout Scotland as a symbol of friendship between Canada and Europe. The 20-foot tall Squamish pedestrian overpass, which we just saw, spanning the Sea to Sky Highway, a red cedar memorial pole for Transport Canada, the major entry doors for the Gordon Smith Gallery, Artists for Kids, amongst many others. And Xwalacktun was initially self-taught with influences from his father and brother, and through careful observation of Coast Salish forms under the tutelage of Larry Joseph, became a skilled artist working to share knowledge on its unique symbolism and expression. And it was at the encouragement of his father, the hereditary chief from North Vancouver Seymour River, that he decided to become an artist, and he enrolled at Capilano College and then the Vancouver School of Art, which later became Emily Carr University, graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. And after completing his degree, he immediately began teaching and sharing his knowledge, a lifelong pursuit which melds artistic excellence and the artist's natural warmth and generosity of spirit with his desire to educate others on the culture and people of the Squamish and Kwalkwelk nations. And Xwalacktun is, of course, the inaugural recipient of Griffin Art Project's North Shore Indigenous Studio Art Award. So just thanks again, Xwalacktun, for your time and your warmth and your wonderful presentation. Okay, so I'll jump on here quickly again. Before I introduce Josephine, I just wanted to mention that if for whatever reason anyone is having any issues with the Zoom interface, we are also live streaming to Griffin Art Project's Facebook page. So in just a moment, I'll post a link in the chat. And I also wanted to mention that at the very end of the presentation, there'll be time for audience questions. So if at any point a question pops into your head for either Xwalacktun or Josephine, feel free to type it at any time in the Q&A. You'll notice because we're using the webinar format of Zoom, the Q&A is actually separate from the chat, and that's where we'll be checking for questions for that portion of today's program. But you'll also have the opportunity to ask your questions out loud. So if that's your preference, it's always really wonderful to hear from you directly, and feel free once we get to the Q&A to just raise that little yellow virtual hand and I can go ahead and unmute you. Just as a disclaimer, I'll mention that we are recording today's presentation, so your voice would be captured on the audio recording. And I just wanted to provide just a few notes of context for today's presentation. So it's part of the Worldings International Residency Series, which is actually an exchange initiative offered in partnership with the Bag Factory in Johannesburg, South Africa. And it's been taking place throughout August, and also it will be taking place throughout September as well. And the residency opportunity connects Canadian artists, so Josephine, Xwalacktun, as well as Nura Ali, with Johannesburg-based artists Pebofatso Mokoena, Lebo Mabuzuela, Wazile Magib, over the course of an intensive 2-month creation period. So the artists have been meeting over Zoom, have been conversing and developing dialogue. And so today is actually the first of 3 live from the studio events we have planned. So we'll be doing 2 more, each live from the studio event will be featuring 2 of the residency artists from the Worldings cohort. So we're really excited to be able to introduce you to these incredible artists. And so up next, we have a presentation from Josephine Lee, and I'm really delighted to introduce Josephine. Josephine Lee holds graduate and undergraduate degrees in both science and fine arts and has exhibited throughout Canada, the United States, and Europe. She was recently awarded the Oscar Colleen Fellowship, the Vera G. List Sculpture Award, and a Gail and Stefan Jaroslawski Outstanding Artist Award at Banff, and a Canada Council for the Arts Grant for Research and Creation. And alongside Griffin Art Projects, Josephine is currently in residence at the Morris and Helen Belkin Gallery in collaboration with physicists at the Stuart Bluesen Quantum Matter Institute Research Center. And Josephine received an MFA in Fine Arts from Parsons, the New School of Art, Media, and Technology, and is an incoming doctoral candidate at Simon Fraser University's School for Contemporary Arts inaugural PhD in Contemporary Arts program, and works as a sessional lecturer at Emily Carr University of Art and Design and the University of British Columbia. And Josephine Lee is the inaugural recipient of Griffin Art Project's BIPOC Residency Award. So thank you so much, Josephine, for your time today, and I will pass it over to you.
Hello. Thank you for having me, and many thanks to Xwalacktun for his incredibly powerful and beautiful talk. It's hard to follow that act, but maybe we'll just start by, I thought what we do is I give you a couple of snippets of previous works that I've done, and then move on to what I've been working on at Griffin Art Projects. So with Jazz's help, maybe we'll show some images and some video.
Should I hit play here, Josephine?
Sure, I'm only seeing your desktop at the moment, actually.
Oh, let me try that again. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So just before we play, so my background is largely informed by my movement throughout the United States, Canada, and South Korea for much of my life. And so I grapple with topics which include ideas of home and belonging, as well as nationalism and the political powers of the nation state. And so this work is titled, I Think I Canada, I Know I Canada, and it was made in 2018. And I'll start by just playing you just a few seconds before I begin to tell you about what it is. Thank you, Jazz. That pause on its own? Or maybe it was like a shorter version that I sent. In any case, that kind of starts off the video. And this one is speaking about legibility. and conditions of cultural and national belonging. And so the text and the title on the flag itself is based on a children's book, The Little Engine That Could, and it takes the phrases that are most well known from this book, which are "I think I can" and "I know I can." And it examines the story's original intention was to reinforce meritocratic values of work and optimism, like hard work and optimism. And so I confront these considerations and try to examine instead the exploitation and alienation and dispossession that immigrant labor has experienced, immigrant life and labor within Canada, and extending that text into the nationhood. And so this work, through this performance of trying to lift and fly this, this object, materializes the psychic burden of identity and language and belonging as a physical one that we carry through our body. So we can move on to the next work. So the next image shows two works, and this image is courtesy of the Seymour Art Gallery. And there's the first on the bottom on the ground and the one on the wall. And I'm just going to give you a brief about the one on the floor. So if we move to the next image, you can get a closer look at that one. And this one is entitled "Stone's Throw from the Old Country." And it is made with handmade borosilicate glass. And all these pieces can be reconfigured depending on the site to create different formations of this well-known childhood game, which is the hopscotch. And I use this this object to kind of, and the titling to sort of refer to the precarious and impossible proposal of being able to return to one's country of origin. And so that's this piece. And then the one on the wall is called "Wedding Duck." And this one is very culturally tied to South Korea, where, or to Korea rather, where the tradition was that when you were getting married, you would be given this pair of ducks as a symbol of your betrothment, I suppose, and your sort of like your unity. But the ducks themselves were traditionally carved by a man who was close to the family, who could only carve one set his whole life. And then he had to have a lot of virtues and fortunes in his own life. And so he couldn't be divorced or have anyone in his immediate family that were divorced. He had to have many sons. He had to be wealthy. So there were a lot of caveats and addendums tied to this form and this object being given. And so what I've done is I've decoupled this pair, and then through a performative act, hammered it into the wall of whatever wall that it resides in, as a gesture of both sort of trying to consider the notion of matrimony and patriarchy tied to heteronormative sort of wedding rituals within Korea. So the next one is a recent work that I completed, which is called "Born Ignorant in an Abyss of Light." And it is a multimedia installation that was at the Broad Art Foundation. And it deals with a very particular moment in time, which is the birth of the nuclear age. And so when in 1945, when the first nuclear bomb was detonated in the world, in Trinity, it was called Trinity, in near Socorro, New Mexico, what people actually don't quite know very well is that 2 miles away from that detonation site, there was a small little ranch house. And it used to be occupied by a German immigrant family. And it was then taken over by the US military during World War II to test fighter jets. And then it was then endowed to the Manhattan Project. And so before this bomb was detonated, parts of the plutonium nuclear core of the very first nuclear bomb was taken into the master bedroom of this house. and assembled. And so here you have this direct sort of layering of the political power of the nation state occupying like the domestic space. And for me, that occupation is always a psychic one that now emerges into quite a literal one. And then I take from that how it manifested these decade-long histories of xenophobia and imperialism and all the different environmental toxicities and considerations that come with nuclear testing. And so if you go to the next image, there's some details of the installation. And so within these hand-blown glass pieces is plasma. So plasma itself creates this open circuit that if you approach it will try to ground itself through your own body or through any conductive sort of material. And then itself, the glass has a rich history when it comes to the nuclear age and military technology and photography and all of that. So there's a lot of sort of richness there. And then when the bomb itself was detonated, it lifted the sand from the desert floor and melted it into radioactive glass known as trinitite. And so there's that consideration as well. And so we're moving a little quickly, but just in the interest of time, I'll show you this video of the looped footage of real nuclear atmospheric tests that were done and then documented, and now those images are declassified. So the sound that you hear is the sound from the plasma that is being generated within the glass and responding to the environment and atmosphere within that space. Okay, so with that work, the work that I'm currently doing at the Griffin Arts Project residency is one that examines these body armor plates that are known within the industry as trauma plates. And so I'm exploring the irony that exists within the language itself and how we can reconcile and create protection for bodies of color. And so I do this by examining histories of like armatures and ballistic protective gear, and then creating pieces that have psychic protection, but not literal, but more of like a metaphorical and symbolic psychic protection for people of color, and how that would manifest itself. And so right now, in the next image, there are a couple sort of references. So these are armor express rifle plate cuts. And so I'm examining different shapings of ballistic armor that currently exists in the industry. And there are a number of different material processes or materials that they use within the industry. But one interesting one is also that they make them out of ceramic. And so a lot of my explorations have already dealt with ceramic before. And so that is a material consideration that I'm also using porcelain to recreate these as well. So the next one, yes. And so these are also examples of how these plates function. And so you see a cross section of ceramic armor plating on the lower left-hand side, and then you see different industry plate cuts, as it were, on the other images. And so in conjunction with these material explorations, what I've been doing is I've been creating biomaterials, specifically bioplastics, bioleathers, And so I've created, using recipes that I found that also made my own recipes. I've been playing with the flexibility, the rigidity, the qualities of these biomaterials as they are placed within and on my body. And so the idea is that I would create these armature fragments and pieces of armature that then I would use to perform gestures of resilience and care. And so some of the next images also show these biomaterial tests, and as well as experimenting with how they move and kind of play within my own body. And next one, and this one's interesting because it uses like dish soap to create a lot of like what we would consider flexibility in latex. It's almost as strong as latex and flexible as well. So the next one, and these are also, but these are also fully biodegradable. So a lot of sustainable or materials that are touted sustainable within the industry require industrial heat to recycle. And so that is something that I also was very cognizant of. And so creating biomaterials that you can then make these structures, and then you literally can just put them in your compost bin, and they will just biodegrade naturally without the need for any really technical or difficult processes of recycling. So the next one was just images of my own ceramic tests of different sort of armature platings. And so I tried making tiles. I'm also making like full on plates with ceramics and porcelain. And so the next image there probably shows a little bit of that. Yeah, and so so right now it's kind of going into a very what I think is very fun direction, which is I've been looking at these Korean skincare masks, and they usually come in these very funny sort of almost a little bit eerie shapes. And so I created one out of porcelain right here, and I was wondering, I started to think about, well, what are these actual masks made of? And what I've discovered was the masks that you can make, the recipe is identical to the recipe that you would use to make ballistic gel. And so ballistic gel is essentially a gel, a medium to simulate the terminal performance of firearm ammunition. And so you would shoot a bullet into the gel, and then you'd be able to see the marks and the projection, like the force that it makes within it, and because it kind of mimics the properties of muscle tissue. And so, but in more symbolically, I think it also has this really interesting, ballistic gel has this really interesting property of being able to slow down this violence and kind of like make it visible. And that visibility and evidentiary component of ballistic gel is something that creates like a visual that's very interesting when it comes to creating like a protective suit for our bodies. And so I was thinking, so in the next image here, in the last one of this presentation, so right now I'm making my own skincare line of ballistic gel skincare masks, and that will not only give you glowing, protective, moisturize your skin, but that it would also create this secondary interesting layering of ballistic kind of resistance. And so right now that's sort of the new direction that it's heading towards. It's by no means the only one, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Josephine. That was wonderful. And what a treat to get some background on your practice, as well as kind of a sneak peek at some of the material tests and research that you've been up to in the studio. So thank you again so much for your time and your presentation today. I'm going to jump back on, and I'm going to invite Xwalacktun to jump back on with us as well, because I'd like to open it up for conversation. I know that Xwalacktun and Josephine, you may have questions or responses to one another, but at the same time, I'll open it up to audience questions as well. So we'll all kind of just jump into this conversation together. So for those in the audience, if you would like to ask a question directly, feel free to raise a virtual hand and I will go ahead and unmute you. But if you're more comfortable typing your question, I'm also very happy to read it out loud to Josephine and Xwalacktun. Oh, we do have a question. Oh, we have a question from Pebo Fatso, who is actually one of the fellow Worldings residency artists. So thank you so much, Pebo Fatso, for joining. And Pebo has asked a question for Xwalacktun, and he wrote, "Do you ever print your wood blocks on paper?"
I've done some wood blocks in the past, not so much, but I've mostly worked in the wood in more of the positive and just created more like monument pieces, like I would say.
Wonderful. Thanks, Xwalacktun. So while we wait, maybe I'll jump in with a question, if I may. Josephine, I'm so mesmerized by kind of your material explorations and some of the materials you've been playing around with, and the one specifically with dish. Did you say it was dish soap that you made those forms with? I'm curious what led you to play around with dish soap specifically, and kind of what avenues of research have you been finding these different materials to play around with? It's so fascinating.
I started because I was starting this special topics course for Emily Carr, and that I found that there was a desire to learn about sustainable materials, but very few offerings for courses for students. And so I wanted to come up with something that seemed accessible for students, easily acquirable, and cost effective. And so that led me into a very deep rabbit hole of biomaterial exploration. And it's quite amazing how open source and open generally researchers are when it comes to biomaterials. Everybody wants to find a better way and a more sustainable way to use and make things. And so everything is sort of out in the open. People are sharing recipes, people are sharing processes. And so really it was just a matter of reading through and contacting people and testing everything within like my kitchen space and trying to, keep things that are like food safe and apart from each other, and kind of failing at that, but creating all these failures and then coming up with like a series of recipes that were somewhat repeatable for students, but also repeatable for myself, and something that created the material qualities that I was looking for. So for that one, I wanted something that not a lot of other bioplastics had, which was I wanted stretch and like flexibility. And really it was just a matter of like adding on top of other like glycerin or gelatin or other materials, dish soap, and it creates this great like flexibility that I was just astonished by.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and sounds like just with stuff you might be able to find around the house or at the store, which makes it kind of, so interesting. It seems, just to look at it, like it would be an industrial process, and yet it's something you can kind of cook up in your own home, which is quite amazing. Thanks, Josephine. Xwalacktun, I might jump on with a question for you. The video that you shared at the end of your presentation, it was so amazing to see kind of the community coming around and working on your sculpture with you, and you there with the chisel kind of working side by side with community members. And I wondered if that's something that is part of the process with many of your works, where there's kind of many hands coming in and taking a turn with the chisel.
Yes, yes, I like, it's more like a bit of collaboration at the time too, so that after I finish doing the work, that it, the people themselves will also give it life because they actually had their hands on, and they're going to share more because they were part of it. And they're going to go away and share, well, I helped take some wood off, and why was this being carved? And yeah, I like giving it life that way, so that, you know, it creates dialogue and it spreads out more.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thanks, Xwalacktun. And I'm not sure if it was today or during your uh, presentation yesterday with the cohort, but I believe when you were speaking of one of the elementary school pieces and you had mentioned there was just so many voices involved and so many kind of ideas coming together. And I just was curious on the process by which you come up with a composition, how you incorporate the ideas. Do you invite students to come with their ideas for the imagery, or do you work with them directly to develop the compositions?
Yeah, a lot of times I would, like one of the schools, secondary schools, we had a dinner in the evening, and we invited parents, teachers, invited the students, and we all sat around and just hand out paper and let people come up with their ideas, whether it's through writing or just sketching. And then we just compile it all together, line it all up on the wall, and try to figure out how can we include everybody's thoughts in this one piece, like bringing it down into a smaller, because you can't add all those ideas on one carving, but you can through the talk, giving this the piece a story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And what a special opportunity for the students and their families to be part of that is just, yeah, incredible.
Yeah. And one of the pieces are because they, you know, when I was in Scotland, went into a school that was probably 500 years old. And there's a carving there. I asked questions about it, how long it's been there. And it's pretty much been there for as long as the school was up. So it's about 500 years old. I was thinking, well, when I went back, was working with the students and the teachers and the administrators, anybody that took wood off, at the end, I asked them all to come back and sign their name on the back because they were a part of it. So when they take that piece off the walls at some point, they're going to see names where people all take some wood off. And then, of course, they'll go away and tell their stories too with their experience.
Amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. Um, so we have a question in the Q&A for Josephine. And this is from Lebo, who is actually another one of the Worldings residency cohort artists. So hi, Lebo, and thanks so much for joining. And this question is to Josephine. Since the masks you create can be for skincare purposes and also be a protective object, is there any interest in making the masks artistic, aesthetically pleasing to look at, or decorative?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think definitely that's where it's going, is that what I found with the other material considerations like the tiling or the other ceramics was that it wasn't enough that they mimicked these already industrial like cuts. But I think that the interest lies in like creating something entirely that doesn't exist within those spaces. And so, yes, that is something that I'm definitely, I think, heading towards.
Amazing. Thanks, Josephine. So I'm just looking at the time and we're about right on track. So I wanted to again just say a huge thank you, Xwalacktun and Josephine, for your time today in the studio, your presentations, and for sharing your work. It's been amazing. So thank you so much. And we'll look forward to following along throughout the rest of your residency as well.
Thank you so much.
And a huge thanks to everyone who joined us today. And as mentioned, this is the first of 3 live from the studio events. So we do hope you tune in next Sunday, as well as Sunday, I believe it's September 5th, the first Sunday in September for our next 2 events. So we hope to see everybody there, and wishing everybody a wonderful rest of their Sunday. Bye, everybody.
Take care.